The less you care, the happier you'll be. Have you ever stopped to think that sometimes the circumstances we avoid the most are the ones that could teach us the most? Picture this: a hermit, living in conditions most of us would find desperate. No wealth, no company, none of the achievements the world values so much. And yet, he smiles. He's at peace. But how? What does he know that we haven't discovered yet? His secret is simple but powerful. He's embraced his fate. He practices what the Stoics call amor fati, the love of fate. It doesn't matter if he's alone, poor, or isolated from the world. He's found joy not in controlling what happens around him, but in controlling how he reacts to it. He realized that true freedom doesn't come from what we have or don't have, but from how we choose to interpret our lives. And you? Have you ever wondered how your life would be if instead of fighting difficulties you decided to accept them? This story has everything to do with what Epictetus and Marcus Aurelius taught. They showed us that suffering doesn't come from circumstances, but from how we respond to them. How many times have we found ourselves in situations that seem beyond our control, letting them consume us? But what if, instead of resisting, we accepted? What if, instead of seeing adversity as the enemy, we saw it as an opportunity to grow, to practice virtue and resilience? You can't control what happens, but you can control how you react. Look at the hermit. He's poor, yes, but his mind is rich. He has no company, but he's found himself. He has no control over external circumstances, but he masters his internal reactions. Now think, what about you? How many times in your life have you faced challenges that seemed insurmountable? Moments where it felt like the weight of the world was on your shoulders. The difference between those who merely survive and those who thrive is acceptance. When you accept what you cannot change, something magical happens. You find strength where there was once weakness. You discover peace where there was once only restlessness. So how about practicing that? Next time you face adversity, ask yourself, how can I use this to become stronger, wiser? Maybe the answer is in embracing what you cannot change. Accepting your fate isn't giving up. On the contrary, it's the first step to mastering the only thing truly under your control: your mind, your actions, your being. Let's stop resisting what we can't control and instead embrace each challenge as an opportunity to grow. Because in the end, like the hermit, true happiness doesn't lie in what you have or lose, but in how you decide to live. Now stop for a moment and reflect. If the hermit found joy in accepting his fate, even without wealth or company, what does that say about what we're truly seeking in life? Are we chasing the right things? Think about it. We live in a world that constantly pushes us to seek more success, more status, more material goods. But is that race really the path to happiness? This is where another powerful perspective comes in, from Zhuangzi, the great Chinese sage. He invites us to think in a completely different way, one that goes against everything modern society teaches us about success and wealth. Zhuangzi talks about something he calls perfect joy. And no, this joy has nothing to do with what you own. It has everything to do with who you are on the inside. Imagine that you've already achieved everything you want: cars, houses, recognition, but still there's a void, a sense that something is missing. Zhuangzi would say it's because you're looking in the wrong place. He warns us about the danger of the endless pursuit of status and material goods, something that, according to him, only leads to exhaustion and dissatisfaction. And you know what's interesting? This idea is completely aligned with what the Stoics also believed. The Stoics teach us that true happiness doesn't come from accumulating external things, which they called indifference. Yes, that's right. For them, things like wealth, fame, and power are indifferent. They might improve our lives in some ways, but they can never provide true joy. And why? Because these things are outside our control. They can come and go, and if our happiness depends on them, we'll always be vulnerable to sadness and frustration. Zhuangzi offers a powerful answer to this: inner wealth. Instead of looking outward, he encourages us to turn our gaze inward. It's in our attitude, in our ability to be indifferent to external circumstances, that we find perfect joy. For him, this joy arises when we stop worrying about what others think, when we stop measuring our lives based on what we have or don't have. This is true freedom, and if we look around, we'll see how relevant this is now more than ever. We live in a consumer culture where a person's value seems to be measured by what they own. But how many times have we heard stories of people who have everything yet still feel empty? And how many times have we encountered those who have little but radiate peace and contentment? The key, as Zhuangzi and the Stoics teach us, is to stop depending on the external to find joy. Of course, there's nothing wrong with seeking success, acquiring goods, or being recognized. But the question is, does your happiness depend on it? If you lost everything tomorrow, who would you be? The Stoics argue that the practice of virtue and mastery over oneself is the only secure path to happiness, and that makes perfect sense. When you start to cultivate wisdom, courage, justice, and temperance within yourself, your joy is no longer at the mercy of circumstances. You become unshakable. So next time you're tempted to measure your worth by what you have, remember Zhuangzi and the Stoics. True wealth isn't in the things you accumulate, but in the person you become. Shall we go together on this journey to seek what truly matters? Because in the end, true joy isn't a matter of having, it's a matter of being. Now that we understand how true joy comes from within and not from external achievements, let's take it a step further. If material wealth and status are, as we've seen with Zhuangzi and the Stoics, indifferent to our happiness, then what really matters? What leads us to live fully and intentionally? Perhaps the answer lies in something many avoid thinking about: the finitude of life itself. This is the moment to reflect on a practice the Stoics held dear and that still resonates deeply today. A practice that forces us to face the most inevitable truth of our existence and, paradoxically, teaches us to value life as it is. I'm talking about memento mori. Imagine this: you're chasing goals, collecting achievements, filling every second with activities and projects, always seeking the next big step. Now stop for a moment and ask yourself, what if today was your last day? What would really matter? That thought may be uncomfortable, but it's exactly this reflection that brings us back to what's essential. Memento mori, which means remember that you will die, is a concept the Stoics used, not as something dark or depressing, but as a powerful reminder that our existence is temporary. By reflecting on death, we're invited to question the priorities we have today. Are we living in alignment with what truly matters? Or are we getting swept up in the endless pursuit of status, material goods, and external validation? Marcus Aurelius, one of the greatest Stoic philosophers, used to say that we should live each day as if it were our last. Not because we should fear death, but because by remembering it, we are able to live with more intention, with more presence. When we recognize that time is limited, we become more conscious of where we invest our energy and focus. Every moment becomes an opportunity to practice virtue, to be the best we can be. And if we stop to think, this connects perfectly with Zhuangzi's criticism of the obsession with external achievements. After all, what's the point of accumulating wealth and status if, in the end, none of it goes with us? Memento mori teaches us to focus on the present, to value relationships, experiences, and above all, to live authentically, without being consumed by social pressures or the endless pursuit of more and more. For the modern world, memento mori is more relevant than ever. We live in an era where time seems scarce, where we're always running, always connected, and often lose sight of what really matters. Reflecting on death forces us to slow down. It reminds us that the things we value most, our loved ones, our passions, our legacy, are priceless and can't be bought. So how can we bring this Stoic concept into our daily lives? It's simple. Every time we're faced with a choice, we can ask ourselves, is this really important? If I knew my time here was limited, would I care about this? That simple reflection has the power to align us with what truly matters. Just as Zhuangzi reminded us that happiness comes from inner wealth, Memento Mori shows us that living fully and meaningfully is what will make us look back at the end of it all with a sense of fulfillment. After all, true virtue lies in living each day with purpose, knowing that our time here is brief but can be profoundly meaningful. After reflecting on Memento Mori and the transformative impact that an awareness of our finitude can have on how we live, there's another essential teaching the Stoics bring us. If death reminds us to live more authentically, then detachment allows us to live that life with peace and inner freedom. And who better to illustrate this than the story of Carpenter Shi and the useless tree? Imagine a tree that no one wants. Its leaves aren't good for medicine, its wood isn't fit for construction, and its shape is too crooked to be used for furniture. In society's eyes, this tree is useless. And yet it lives, it thrives, it grows in peace far from the axe, while other useful trees are cut down, shaped and used until they disappear. Carpenter Shi, a character from an ancient Chinese story, realizes this truth when he observes a tree that, precisely because it seems useless, manages to live much longer than the others. This story is a perfect metaphor for Stoic detachment. In Stoicism, we shouldn't worry about what others think, about the usefulness we appear to have, or about the expectations society places on us. The Stoics teach that true peace and happiness come from living according to our own values and virtues, not from what the world around us values. Now think about how this applies to our everyday lives. We live in a culture that values productivity above all else. We're constantly bombarded with the idea that our worth is directly tied to what we do, how much we produce, and the success we achieve. But is that really what defines who we are? Do we always need to be doing to find our place in the world? The Stoics, like Carpenter Shi, challenge this view. They show us that by detaching from external pressures, we can finally live authentically, at peace with ourselves. By letting go of the need for others' approval and the obsession with being useful in the eyes of others, we discover a new kind of freedom, a life where our inner integrity and virtue are what truly matter. Marcus Aurelius wrote about this in his Meditations, the idea that we should not let others' judgments govern our actions. He understood that true value lies in our ability to act according to our principles, not in being shaped by what society expects of us. And that's so powerful, because by abandoning the desire to be constantly validated or to meet external standards of success, we begin to live more fully and calmly. The story of the useless tree teaches us that by detaching from the need to be useful or productive all the time, we can grow in peace, far from the pressures that consume so many. And this doesn't mean giving up on our goals or ambitions. It simply means that our inner peace shouldn't depend on them. The true measure of our worth comes from within. This Stoic detachment is a powerful answer to the modern culture of excess, productivity, and perfectionism. By freeing ourselves from the chains of others' approval and the need to always be the best, we find a new way to live, a life not defined by what we do, but by who we are. Like the useless tree, we find strength and resilience in our own nature, far from critical eyes and superficial expectations. So next time you feel pressured to produce more, achieve more, or meet others' expectations, remember the useless tree and the Stoic teachings. By detaching from these pressures, you open yourself up to a life that's calmer, more authentic and more meaningful. Shall we keep cultivating what really matters? Because in the end, it's not what we do that defines us, but how we choose to live. After diving into the value of detachment with the story of the useless tree, we realize that true strength lies in our ability to free ourselves from external expectations. But what about when we're directly confronted by life's challenges and pressures? How do we maintain that inner peace in situations that test us emotionally? This is where the Stoics offer us an even deeper practice: active indifference. Imagine being in the middle of an emotional storm, whether from criticism, an unexpected loss, or pressure at work. The world around you seems to be falling apart, emotions are running high, and all you want to do is react, maybe even in extreme ways. But what if, instead of letting those emotions take over, you manage to stay calm, respond with serenity and resilience, as if you were in the eye of the storm, where everything is at peace? That's the power of active indifference, one of the central virtues of Stoicism. Active indifference isn't a state of apathy or disinterest, as the name might suggest at first glance. On the contrary, it's a practice that requires deep presence and awareness. It means that, in the face of external situations, whether good or bad, success or failure, you maintain emotional balance, not being swept away by highs of euphoria or lows of despair. You remain centered, aware that, as the Stoics teach us, most external things are beyond our control. In a world that places so much value on material success and others' opinions, practicing active indifference is a way to maintain serenity. Just as Zhuangzi proposes the idea of doing nothing to achieve joy, the Stoics show us that many times the best response is not letting ourselves get carried away by extreme emotions. This doesn't mean not feeling, it means feeling with wisdom. It means that instead of reacting impulsively, we learn to observe what's happening inside and outside of us, and then respond with calm and clarity. Marcus Aurelius, in his Meditations, emphasized the importance of maintaining equanimity, the ability to stay balanced in the face of adversity. He knew that by focusing on what we can control, our own actions and reactions, we handle life's inevitable ups and downs better. When we practice active indifference, we cultivate this ability. And the more we practice it, the stronger we become emotionally, the more capable we are of facing challenges without losing inner peace. Here's the key to applying this in our daily lives. Start small. Next time something doesn't go as planned, whether it's criticism, a mistake, or even an unexpected setback, stop and ask yourself, is this under my control? Can I change what happened? Or can I only change my reaction? By asking this question, you're already practicing active indifference. You're training your mind to focus on what matters instead of getting dragged down by what you can't control. This is powerful because we live in a world of constant pressures, whether to reach goals, impress others, or meet expectations. But by practicing active indifference, you free yourself from these invisible chains. You start to live with an unshakable calm, knowing that true success isn't defined by the external world, but by the control you have over yourself. Every challenge is an opportunity to strengthen this equanimity. Every criticism, every pressure, every obstacle is an invitation to respond with serenity and wisdom. By cultivating active indifference, you'll discover that even in the midst of the storm, true peace lies within you. Now that we've explored how the practice of active indifference helps us maintain emotional balance amid external pressures, there's a fundamental next step to achieving true inner peace. It goes beyond simply accepting the events around us and develops an even deeper attitude, not just accepting what happens, but loving what happens. And this is where the story of Pei Kung Tzu and the Stoic principle of amor fati comes in. Imagine a person who lives their life without resisting what fate brings. Whether it's a great loss or an unexpected victory, they look at each situation and think, this is exactly what should happen. This total acceptance of fate is what Pei Kung Tzu teaches us. Like the Stoics, Pei Kung Tzu doesn't see fate as good or bad. He simply accepts it as an undeniable part of life. And more than that, he loves it. This principle is called amor fati, which literally means love of fate. The Stoics, especially Epictetus and Marcus Aurelius, believed that the key to happiness was in the complete acceptance of what happens to us, without being attached to judgments of success or failure. Everything that happens is part of a natural order, and our inner peace depends on our ability to accept this order without resistance. Epictetus, in particular, teaches us that true freedom doesn't come from changing what's outside of our control, but from accepting what happens to us and focusing on how we respond to it. When we understand that most of what happens in our lives is beyond our control, other people's behavior, the events of the world, even our health in many cases, we begin to realize that resisting or fighting against fate only brings suffering. But what if, instead of fighting, we decided to embrace what is given to us? This is the power of amor fati. When we fully accept fate, we stop wasting energy trying to control the uncontrollable. We start focusing on what truly matters, cultivating our virtue, reacting wisely, courageously, and justly, no matter what happens around us. And this teaching is more relevant in the modern world than ever. Think about the situations where something unexpected happens, a missed opportunity, a failure that hits us hard, or even an event that completely changes the course of our lives. In moments like these, the first reaction might be resistance, frustration, or even despair. But the Stoics invite us to see these events in a new light. What if this failure is actually a disguised opportunity? What if this setback is exactly what we needed to grow? When we practice amor fati, we shift our perspective. We begin to see every event, good or bad, as part of a greater plan, as an opportunity to practice virtue and become better people. This is the true freedom the Stoics advocate. We no longer need to fear what the future holds because we know that, whatever our fate, we can respond virtuously. The story of Pei Kung Tzu reminds us that by accepting fate without judgment, we find peace. When we love what happens to us, no matter what it is, we start living with less resistance, more gratitude, and an unshakable serenity. Thus, amor fati isn't just passive acceptance, but a call to embrace what life brings us, always seeking to respond with wisdom and courage. So, how about starting to practice this? Next time something unexpected or unwanted happens, instead of resisting, try accepting it with a stoic thought. This is what should happen. Love your fate, love every part of the journey, because in the end, it's this very acceptance that leads us to true peace and happiness. Now that we've explored the transformative power of amor fati, the loving acceptance of fate, we see how the Stoics teach us to find peace by embracing everything life brings. But how does this translate to the modern world, where we're bombarded by constant pressures, deadlines, and expectations? The wisdom of Stoicism remains an essential guide to navigating this sea of stress and anxiety. So, we come to a crucial question. What is the value of Stoic philosophy today? We live in a fast-paced world. Every day we're pressured to do more, achieve more, be productive, successful, and constantly connected. Technology keeps us on high alert all the time, and the demands of modern society seem endless. This is where Stoicism, an ancient philosophy, proves more relevant than ever, offering practical tools to cultivate resilience and serenity amid the chaos. Stoicism gives us tools to face these pressures in a way that strengthens us, rather than wears us down. One of the most powerful concepts this philosophy offers is the dichotomy of control. Stoics like Epictetus teach us to distinguish between what is within our control and what is not. It sounds simple, but think about it. How much time and energy do we waste trying to change things that are completely beyond our reach? From other people's behavior to unforeseen events, we spend a significant part of our lives fighting the inevitable. By understanding the dichotomy of control, we learn to redirect our energy. We can focus on what we can truly influence, our own actions, thoughts, and attitudes. This is liberating because by no longer trying to control the uncontrollable, we find more peace and focus. Imagine how many internal conflicts could be avoided if we practice this distinction daily. Less stress, less frustration, and more energy for what truly matters. Another Stoic concept that holds great value today is the pursuit of ataraxia, or mental tranquility. This state of serenity is the opposite of the constant agitation so many of us feel. Ataraxia doesn't mean being indifferent to what's happening around us, but rather staying calm in the face of adversity without being swept away by emotional turbulence. For the Stoics, true inner peace comes from knowing we are doing our best within the circumstances, accepting what we cannot change, and acting with virtue where we can. When we apply this to our modern world, we see how Stoicism can be a powerful antidote to stress, anxiety, and burnout. The simple act of asking yourself in a moment of tension, "Can I control this?" already creates a mental space that allows us to better handle challenges. By focusing on what is truly within our power, our choices and conduct, we find a balance that shields us from the negative effects of stress. And this practice doesn't have to be complicated. It can start with small daily actions, how you respond to criticism, how you handle an unexpected issue at work, or even how you deal with the expectations you place on yourself. Stoic philosophy teaches us to seek virtue in every moment, and resilience comes from this conscious choice to focus on what's within our control. That's true strength. It's not about trying to dominate the external world, but mastering yourself. In a world where success is often measured by external achievements, Stoicism reminds us that true serenity and resilience come from within. When we apply this philosophy to our daily lives, we protect our mental peace, even amid the demands of the day. By recognizing what we can control and accepting what we cannot, we can maintain calm and focus amid the chaos. So how can we start applying this today? Maybe the first step is to stop fighting the uncontrollable and begin embracing the simplicity of focusing on what truly matters. As Epictetus would say, it's not things that disturb us, but our interpretation of them. Let's cultivate that serenity together because, in the end, it's this inner balance that will allow us to face any storm with resilience and clarity. Stoic philosophy is more than just an ancient concept. It's a living practice, and in today's world, it can be the key to a life of peace amid modern storms. Throughout this journey, we've explored the profound teachings of Stoicism and how they can transform the way we face the challenges of the modern world. The Stoics teach us that true freedom comes from within, not from control over the world around us, but from mastery over our own reactions and attitudes. And when we adopt this view, we discover an inner strength that protects us from stress, anxiety, and external pressures. Now, the question is, how will you apply this to your life? If you enjoyed this content and want to continue learning how Stoic philosophy can help you live with more serenity and resilience, don't forget to like this video and subscribe to the channel for more videos like this. Let's keep growing together in wisdom and see you in the next video.